there she is. Look at that. Look at you guys. Are you in like a professional studio right now? Is that how seriously you're taking this podcast? I appreciate that.
I know, right? I hired a studio. No, this is like a room. We just put like a bit of a wall behind it to do some talking heads and stuff. Lockie's just lazy to get here sometimes.
That's okay. I was gonna say, I figured, he wins ADCC. I'm assuming he's more of a diva now. Is that fair to say?
Not really. He's just lazy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I just assumed you'd be a sweaty mess after practice on your cell phone. But we've got a professional studio. We got a makeup crew. This is great. We're not screwing around here. These Gileses are very professional. Well, I'll kick this off here, guys. We are back in the household of the power couple of BJJ. The Gileses here. This is how bad lockdown is in Australia. They're both so bored that they've agreed to talk to a random Canadian guy, which I really appreciate. So I'm exploiting the lockdown right now. We got another great one today, another insanely talented world-class athlete. Your resume is preposterous. Like it's insane. I feel like it could take me an hour just to talk about your resume, but former world-class gymnast, represented both Australia and Poland on the international stage, decides to move on and take up sprint cycling, becomes an Australian cycling champion. Is that correct?
Not quite. I won a series of, I probably wasn't as good as I would like to be track cycling, but I did sprint for about 6 years. I'm basically jack of all trades, master.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know if there's anything on this list that you can't do. So she decides to do that. Then she goes back to school to become a physiotherapist. So you have your bachelor's with honors, and you still have a job doing physiotherapy as well. So you guys are crazy. 3-time world champion. Some of that is no-gi. You've got, you won a world championship at blue belt, purple belt, and brown belt. 2-time Asian champion. This one blows my mind. First female in Australia to win 2 world championships in 1 year at 2 different belts. I read that somewhere. If it's not true, just go with it.
No, I think it is. I don't actually know. I think it is. Yeah, that was fun.
You're so modest. You've probably got the dates of both of those tattooed on you somewhere, I would assume. She's got her own page on BJJ Heroes, which, as I said, is the Hollywood Walk of Fame for grapplers. ADCC Trials Winner, ADCC Veteran, and she's one half of the BJJ Power Couple with wife of Lachlan Giles. Is it fair to say that you two are like the Beyonce and Jay-Z of jiu-jitsu?
We really can't sing, so probably not.
I'm assuming you're both worth billions like those two are, but...
True. I wish. That would be nice.
How about the Brad and Angelina of jiu-jitsu? Is that more fair?
Oh, they're just awesome.
Yeah.
We're like lazy. No, we're not lazy. We're just, not very cool.
Oh, yeah, lazy. Yeah, lazy with a resume like that. Okay, if you're lazy, yeah. So I've actually forgot to do this. When Lachlan was here, I had the Tim Hortons cup with the Australian flag. But since you're also Polish, I did a little makeshift Polish flag here. So we got the dual citizenship here.
Amazing.
My printer ran out of ink, so I actually had to cut a piece of a Tim Hortons coffee cup to make the red thing there. So
that is so
we spare no expense here at the Paul Federici podcast. Well, first of all, look, I'm so grateful you gave me your time. You guys are awesome. I just want to touch base with you like I have been because you're a human being and things are crazy over there. I talked with Lachlan probably just a couple weeks ago. You guys are having a curfew. Has anything changed and how are you doing right now with all that?
Yeah, I think there's no more curfew. So we had a curfew for, I think, 8 weeks or something that you had to stay home between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Wow.
So they've lifted that, but there's nowhere to go, like it's, you can't, you still, like, I don't really care about being out of home after 8 p.m. There's just nowhere to go. Everything is pretty much illegal unless, like, going to work, you need a permit.
Wow. That's
nothing's
crazy.
really changed apart from that. We do only have, like, between 5 to 10 cases a day now.
Okay.
But we still can't go more than 5 Ks out of home. It's been pretty crap. And, our gym has been shut since March, I think. So, yeah.
Are you guys managing okay that way? Like, is there concern? I mean, I've seen 2 gyms that I train with that were like home for me actually just closed. So is that something you're concerned about at this point?
I think we're okay.
Yeah.
We'll be doing okay. You know, like most places in Australia have rent relief from like it's like a legal
Right.
requirement.
Yep.
Obviously, we're not making any money. We'll be okay, just because we do have bigger gyms and the team
Sure.
we work with have some like really good business ideas, and we're always trying to do, you know, online stuff. Now I think you can do PT in the park, like you can have 2
Yeah.
people. So we're always trying to do stuff, but it's yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's obviously concerning and pretty
Yeah.
tough to have your business shut for 6 months. Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing Lachlan's a billionaire with all the sales on BJJ Fanatics, right? Is that true? You guys have like
A
servants
little
and
bit of that. It's like, you know, just a tiny bit of billionaire status,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it has given us a lot of time to concentrate on the instructionals and planning a lot of stuff for the future, you know, syllabus and instructionals, and so
Yeah.
that's been a blessing in disguise as well, I
Well, I
guess.
was just
Yeah.
gonna say, I find you guys really interesting because you guys are both such high achievers, and it seems like you guys live very busy lives. So is having to take a step back? Are there some positives that have come out of this that maybe you've seen that you weren't aware of when you were kind of tunnel vision on training and living your life?
Yeah, I think definitely for me, I'm a little bit more crazy than Lockie, I think, in terms of overdoing things and overtraining. You
Yeah.
know, I think about like even like ADCC prep, like I would roll pretty hard twice a day and then lift pretty heavy 3 times a week, and then I would still see my physio patients, not a full load, like I wouldn't see, you know, 15 patients a day, but I'd still worked every day, and I probably coached twice a day as
My
well
God.
on most days. And I just like I think about it now, I'm like, I have no idea that, you know, you just sort of don't stop. And so
Yeah.
what I've realized that like just training with Lockie even and training once a day and maybe doing some rehab, I think I've actually improved a lot because it's given me time to like not just fight for every point all the time and fight to I never really fight to win in training, but you know, I've really learned how to just experiment and play with my jiu-jitsu a little bit more.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think, yeah, that's made me improve quite a bit. So,
Yeah.
no, just like having a week off, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have a week off or a month off, it doesn't actually matter. So I've chilled out a little bit.
Oh, that's good. No, I mean, certainly way different levels, but I feel like sometimes sort of the problem I've had is like I'm competitive and like I want to win in the rounds, and it's like, especially if you always have a competition coming up, it seems like you can get stuck
Yeah.
in that mode perpetually. And so sometimes this lockdown, I've kind of been like, you know what, let's just relax a little bit, and it's been a mental shift. So is that kind of what you're talking about a little bit with your training?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like you're right. I don't always prep for comps, but there's always like I try to compete once every, I don't
Yeah.
know, 2 months. It is hard from Australia, obviously. Like we don't, yeah, I don't really have too many other black belts my size that we can compete against that are not like my best friends or something, you know,
Sure.
which I would rather just roll with and spend the money on beer or something.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so for us to go anyway, it's a long way and it's a big effort to travel internationally all the time, and it's pricey. So just
Yeah,
not having that
absolutely.
pressure, so not having not pressure, but just like not cutting weight all the time or
Oh my
gaining
God.
weight. Like
Yeah.
I've, you know, like I've gotten actually a little bit bigger just because I'm not training as hard, but just not having that constant thought about diet and weight. Like,
Yep.
am I trying to put on weight or lose weight? Or um, at the same time, I do miss the competition,
Oh,
and I think I
absolutely.
miss the yeah, like the focus of it rather than the actual competition. But um, yeah, it's nice to just relax. But I am starting to miss like the adrenaline.
Oh my God. Well, I don't think I certainly didn't expect it to go on this long. I mean, and now they're talking, now it's become, oh yeah, well, you know, 14 days to flatten the curve has become, okay, we're hiding in our houses for years on end.
To
But don't worry about putting on too much weight because you can always take on Gabby Garcia at ADCC, right? She's, you know,
no thanks.
no. Um,
Yeah, look, 60 kilos is difficult for me. So yeah, and I used to train with Gabby when we lived in Brazil,
oh
and
my
she was
God, really?
very, very nice to me. But but I would not like to fight her. No.
Well, look, I
No.
wanted to start a little bit here with your gymnastics background because I find you really interesting. I mean, like I knew about your BJJ stuff, and as I started to do more research about you, I was just really blown away by this long history of elite competition you've had. So you started training gymnastics, and you ended up representing, I think, both Poland and Australia. So talk to me a little bit about those early days of getting into gymnastics, and what was your training like that back then? Because it sounds like a very intense sport.
Yeah, it is a crazy sport. And I think the big difference with gymnastics and other sports is that you peak when you're still a child.
Yeah,
and
it's so bizarre.
it is. Hopefully it's changing a little bit. You see more gymnasts into the 20s, which is still very young. But
yeah, absolutely.
Part of it is like supposedly it's easier to do things before you hit puberty and before when you're tiny. But it's not. Like from my perspective now as a mature adult, I have no interest in seeing. Apart from the skill, I want to see like strong women compete. So
yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully the sport is changing, and I think that's why it's. There's quite a lot of abuse. I started training because it was fun. I just wanted to dance like with most other people. And then it became pretty quickly we were training like 24 hours a week and then 30 hours a week.
God.
So, yeah, I started in Poland, and that was in the late 80s. I'm pretty old.
Oh, stop. Get out of here. Yeah.
I am. I've got great hair and all. But anyway, yeah, so it was pretty full on. It was kind of fun, but then we were doing international competitions pretty early on from an early age. There's always pressure to be really slim. I think back in the day, the way people spoke to you was, we didn't have political correctness and all this stuff. So the culture was very different, and I can appreciate that. But I think probably the coaches at the time didn't quite conceptualize what lifelong effects it would have on girls. And it's not just me, it's all my teammates. And it's not just the Eastern Europe thing. When I moved to Australia, I did have a Ukrainian, I think, coach.
Okay.
So perhaps it's that Eastern European culture still. But, even though Australia historically is not very good at gymnastics, or not at rhythmic gymnastics, it was still just as abusive, if not more. So it's just the whole culture in the sport. And, you kind of get trained into like fear and obedience. And it's really wrong. Traditionally, you're meant to be tall and anorexic and flexible and beautiful. And, you're meant to be jumping high and having hand-eye coordination as well as being expressive and all this stuff. So it is, it's a very difficult sport. It's just very, very subjective.
Yeah, which obviously must be I would imagine it's frustrating when you're doing all this work and then you're almost presenting like a painting to somebody, and depending on who's looking at it, you're going to get very different sort of perspectives on what it means and whether it's good or not. So how old were you when you started this?
I was a late bloomer at 7.
Oh, wow. So, really, you got into it really late. Yeah, it's the old 7-year-old.
Like borderline, will I make it? So I was 7 when I started, and I think I retired when I was about 19 or 18. Yeah.
Wow. Well, you've kind of been hinting at it a bit. I mean, I saw this kind of post on your Instagram, and I think there was a Mary Claire article that sort of you speaking out about some of these experiences you've had has led to sort of the Human Rights Commission investigating gymnastics. And I don't want to put you on the spot. I just wonder if you could elaborate a little bit about sort of a little bit more to the inside that people like me wouldn't see. Like I see the competitions and you see the Olympics and all that. Were there specific things that you experienced that you're comfortable sharing to kind of give people a bit of an insight into what that life is like?
Sure. So, look, for me, it was a little while ago. I'm 36 now, so I'm kind of well and truly, like, I've dealt with whatever issues I had.
Sure. I appreciate you. Like, I certainly don't want to make you uncomfortable. You seem to have talking about it, and I think it's super important to talk about, because for somebody like me, I wouldn't know that or assume that. So, please tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Look, I think so there's kind of like a worldwide movement going on at the moment, and after watching, a movie called Athlete A came out. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
No.
Really interesting documentary about the sexual abuse in American gymnastics by Larry Nassar, who's now jailed.
Oh,
okay. So it kind of, all of that was intertwined in it, and although I never experienced sexual abuse, it does bring up all these memories flood back of, like the kind of like, hang on, like the way they treated us was not right. Because for all these years, you kind of go, well, maybe I could have been smaller and I could have been skinnier and I could have trained harder. So the adults were right, the coaches were right, and the judges were right, and everyone was right. And you don't think that, they're the problem ever. Like it was always my fault. And after kind of watching that, you kind of go, oh wait, like maybe we're not, the kids are not the problem.
Well, I mean,
maybe it's the people in power.
You're 7 years old. Like, I mean, these
Yeah.
are almost like parental figures to you. You haven't made sense of the world. You're going to normalize, like that behavior probably is just normal to you at that age.
It's absolutely normal. You spend probably more time at the gym than with your own parents after
Right.
school. If like I remember being told I was when I was 24 kilos, and I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, and I was 24 kilos, and the coach told the group to call me that my new nickname is Fatso until I've lost weight.
Oh my
And,
God.
instead of going like, oh, I wouldn't even get upset. I would just go home going, cool, like I'm not going to eat for 3 days. Is that okay, mum? Because I'm fat and I can't be fat to do gymnastics. You actually, you believe these things, so that's what shapes your future, I guess, and the way you feel about yourself. And what really got to me, like, so all of this sort of stuff, there's so many examples, like even when we were, I don't know, 17, 18, and our coaches in Australia telling us that, like, you're developing breasts and that's really ugly. So if you lose weight, that won't happen anymore, just things like that. So when I became a physio at my old clinic, there was the part of the Australian national team coming through to be treated by us. And it just hit me that it's still all the same. I thought it was like, in the 2000s, early 80s, then 90s, and I thought it was over and things were different. And they're really not. What I was hearing from the girls was just really disturbing. And I talked to a few of them that are still currently in the national team, and they can't speak out. A lot of them still won't say anything because they would be thrown off the team, and there would
the
be
repercussions are too severe. Like it's almost like you training for ADCC and putting all this time and energy, and then all of a sudden it's like if you say something, you lose it all. And you're young. I mean, this I can't imagine. This is probably your whole world, and
it is.
The thought about that being taken away would be overwhelming.
Absolutely. And I mean, these girls often are homeschooled. They don't, apart from traveling for competitions, you don't really experience, like, you're a little bit sheltered. I was lucky enough that I had an older brother and friends outside of gymnastics, but often the girls are really sheltered and they have no ability to kind of distinguish about what's real and what's not okay till a little bit later in life. I mean, I know when we were about 18, a couple of myself and another 2 or 3 senior gymnasts, we actually went to complain about a coach to a state association, and they pretty much dismissed us, and they said, why would you come now after 10 years? And we're like, because we were children, like we didn't know. So part of the reason why I decided to actually say something publicly was because the girls now can't. A lot of them still won't. And I really don't care what the gymnastics community thinks of me right now. I just have no attachments. I will fight them if I have to. I just don't care. So
what I think is great too is that it seems like you're such an accomplished person. You're well educated. You've achieved success in gymnastics and cycling and jiu-jitsu, and you're a physiotherapist. And so you have kind of a platform and you're highly respected, right? They can't just dismiss you as a disgruntled former gymnast, perhaps, that maybe didn't get the dream that they wanted or whatever it is. You have the sort of the clout to sort of stand on your own and say, I've taken time away from this. I'm successful in my life, but I'm reporting on this. And I think that that's really important to have role models like that.
I think so. I mean, like, I don't have that much reach into gymnastics community, and I thought no one would even read it, but surprisingly, I actually did, and it prompted other girls to actually speak out, which was really cool. But yeah, I think from gymnastics point of view, I don't know how much input I have, but what I do have is, even like cutting weight in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I've been able to cut to like rooster weight, which is ridiculous. I had like 8% body fat or less, and you can do that without abuse and without feeling shit about yourself and without coaches abusing you. And like, so I think my thing was like, you can actually achieve these things with like nice and kind people
with
in your
positive
life.
support. Yeah. Well, I just I was just off camera here. I was doing a little bit of math on my calculator because you guys go by kilograms. So over here, people, you're just as reference, your coach was calling you a fatso at 52 pounds at whatever age that was. 52 pounds. That's insane. I have a dog right now that looks tiny and he weighs 50 pounds. That's absurd. I think you hit on some really interesting points, and it's this idea of normalizing sort of eating disorders, right? I'm assuming that was probably very prevalent then, right? Because you're so young, and like, it's interesting because my sister actually has her PhD in clinical psychology, and she does eating disorder work. So this stuff drives her crazy. So I think she'll find this really interesting, but can you just sort of talk about that? You mentioned sort of you expected to be anorexia. What was eating like for you back then, and what did you consider normal, and what were you doing to achieve this unattainable sort of figure?
Yeah, I think it went through stages. I think when I was little, like probably as a junior, like before I hit puberty, I just like wanted to under eat. Like I just wanted to be tiny and fit into the mold. And, I would have arguments with my mom if I could like just eat, I don't know, like an apple and an egg in a day. And she often wouldn't let me, like just things like that. And then when I started developing and like every other female should, you put on weight and your metabolism is a little bit different and your body shape changes. And that was really, really hard, as it would be for any other girl. But I think instead of having, not once did we have a dietitian or anyone, I remember going to the Australian Institute of Sport and they did like camps and we got skin fold tests and the advice was you should do more cardio on top of the 6 hours of training plus
I was just going to say, you're already training 35 hours a week. That's insane,
But no one's ever bothered to actually go like, you don't need to starve yourself or like, why don't we reduce body weight for a competition, because it kind of is a requirement, even though it's a culture that needs to change. I understand you still have to look a certain way to have better lines or whatever crap someone once made up, it's really nothing to do with skill, which annoys me. But I think towards like my teenage years, I turned a bit more into binge eating and kind of like, I was never bulimic, but a lot of girls were, and going on starvation and then binges and hating yourself for that. You never kind of fueled properly for training. The training was like spaced out over 4 hours, but out of that, you're probably really active doing routines like maybe for an hour and a half. So it was a lot of wasted time, a lot of time we weren't actually moving or burning calories. So it was just really disordered eating. I don't even you're always criticizing yourself. No one ever tells you you look nice. You never want to get into a leotard. Sometimes if you lose too much weight, that's also not attractive. It's a mess. And I remember when I retired from gymnastics and started cycling and we went out for pizza after training and I was like, what? People eating pizza? Like, it wasn't because I would eat pizza, but I would never do it in front of other people. I would do it by myself and then feel guilty about it. And I was like, what's wrong with everyone? So it took me into my mid-20s to kind of go, oh, well, if you're hungry, you just eat. Like, it's okay.
Well, I mean, it sounds like, I think one of the things that I read you say is that you ended up developing a healthy body image. And I think that that's pretty interesting and good to hear, because when you're that young, your personality and your perception of yourself in the world is shaped often at a very young age. And so I imagine like that's the kind of, you talk about long-term effects, that's the kind of behavior and mentality that you may never get away from that. So how were you able to come from an environment like that and yet get to a healthy place at a relatively young age still? Because I've seen people, and my sister deals with people now that they never get through it,
Yeah, look, I'm not going to lie and say that I never think about my body or,
of course.
Like especially now during Corona times, I guess like it's changed and I've had a six-pack for 8 years without trying and now I don't, and it's freaking me out, but I'm okay. I'm very okay with it. I think, look, in cycling, it took me a little while, but I think knowing that it's all about power to weight ratio, and my coaches were forever going on about we just need to put weight on you so you're more powerful
Yep.
and stronger and bigger. You start, and then you're surrounding with other women who are like have huge thighs and a booty, and it's like it's celebrated, you know, like strong women
Yeah,
were
it's
really
powerful.
celebrated.
Yeah, it's an athletic body.
Yeah.
It's not a, it's not a weak, underfed machine,
What
you know?
Absolutely. One of my first races at more like the elite level was with Anna Mears, who is a multiple-time Olympic and world champion. And she's so powerfully built. She literally had this booty where you could put a cup of coffee on it. And I just remember lining up next to her going like, so scrawny.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to produce enough power?
Yeah.
So that was like a race to get bigger legs, bigger butt, and be strong.
Sure.
And I think that, it was just different things were celebrated, and I had the freedom to actually like just celebrate my body for what it can do rather than how I look. I think in gymnastics, it's not even your body shape or how you look. It's even like, you get told what to wear, and you have to smile at the right judges, and you have to act a certain way in public, and you can't look like a mess. Your bra strap can't hang out on the street. Wow. So it's like everything is like you just have to be in this tiny little mold. And suddenly I had the freedom to be who I wanted to be. And then when I started jiu-jitsu, obviously there's weight categories, and you can be successful at every weight division if that's what you want. I don't ever, my teammates anyway, we don't ever like make anyone feel bad. We're just like every body's different, and everyone can do jiu-jitsu depending on the body type. And it took me, but in fairness, like I used to compete at featherweight, and it took me probably about 3 years to decide to cut to light feather, because I was scared that I would regress to being a little bit crazy if I started cutting weight, but I didn't. I just cut weight and I was okay.
No, it's interesting. It's, I mean, even me, I can't relate obviously on so many levels, but I was a heavy kid, and people were mean to me, and people made fun of me. And so I developed this kind of similar, where you develop this sense of yourself, and if you get bigger, it's not good. And I lost a lot of weight from grade 9 to 10, and suddenly I was way more popular, and all this kind of stuff. And I fell into that trap. I didn't realize it, but I was kind of binging. I never had I was never vomiting, but I would have binging episodes. And it wasn't till later that somebody told me that, like, well, you're purging through exercise. Like, it's not, you're not actually, so I kind of fell into that trap as well in a lot of ways. And even now, like, I tend to be for competitions. I'm not a big guy, but I always weigh. I'm always heavier. Like no matter what division I'm in, I'm always a bit of a smaller guy. And so that kind of bothers me, and it's a bit of a frustration. So I find it interesting though that you've been able to sort of navigate this in jiu-jitsu with a weight sport, because I do, and I that's why I really appreciate you talking about this, because I see a lot of this even in jiu-jitsu, not necessarily the coaches being abusive, but people like feeling like I got to go down another weight class, and disordered eating, and I don't think it's talked enough about. So how have you been able to sort of maintain not going down that road in jiu-jitsu and stay kind of in a healthier spot?
Look, I think honestly, I cut weight the first time for like Blue Belt Worlds to light feather, which was probably only about, in pounds, probably about 8 pounds or so. And then after that, I just kind of stayed that size. And I think for me, it's pretty easy to maintain my weight without trying off season with my lifestyle. Not right now. Usually training twice a day, physiotherapy, it's an active job. I literally never sit down for more than 2 minutes.
Yeah, you're probably burning a ton of calories.
So the amount of energy I'm burning, I think, is quite extreme throughout the day, and I was probably under eating, so just because I didn't have time, not because I was trying to or was hungry or anything like that. I would have dessert pretty much every night after training, have ice cream and cake and whatever I wanted, and pizza, and I never really gained too much weight after that. But then I decided to cut to rooster, because I thought, if I get like 10 or 115 pounds without like eating ice cream and pizza, but I already had a six-pack and I was already lean, I thought, well, if I just cut that out, I'll be rooster, and then I will be the strongest out of the whole division.
It's easy to convince yourself of these things.
but it was really hard. And to stay sane, I got a dietitian. There's a guy, a good friend of mine called Reid Rial, who now works for the UFC Center in China, but he did his PhD in weight cutting in combat sports.
Okay.
So I pretty much said, do you think we can do it? And I did DEXA scans, and, I went to a doctor, and they said, like, it's borderline. You might not make it just because you literally don't have body fat. But we tried it, and it was like a mental challenge for me,
Sure.
I was like, if I do this, but that's very different for a lifestyle diet. Doing something for 6 weeks and really seeing if you can do it is relatively easy for me. I think for me, if I don't eat and I eat the right stuff, I lose weight. It's pretty simple, but you just have to be patient.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I won't do it again. You turn into an absolute psycho, and it's probably not healthy for a female. I thought I was like dying a lot of the times. I would like think I was fainting lying down, and it paid off. I won brown belt worlds, and I'm glad I tried. But the challenge doesn't excite me anymore. It makes me like,
well, that's the issue. Exactly what you said is when you do that and then you have success, it's a real mind trap, right? Because you think you get to a point where you think, okay, I can't win or I'm not ready to compete unless I look like a skeleton or something like that. And I see people getting into that. So I find it interesting, but I think what you said is really good too, is that you're doing it in a more scientific way. Yes, you're pushing your body, but at least you have professionals around you, and there is an exit strategy. This isn't like your new lifestyle where you're like, I'm a rooster weight 20. Yeah, exactly.
You can't do that. And I think on top of that, it's not just about losing weight, but knowing how you can weigh less, so manipulating, so there's obviously the weight loss for like 5 weeks beforehand, but there's a whole lot of science in how to manipulate your body weight,
like fluid
fiber
balance and all that kind of stuff,
not
right?
so much. Fluid a little bit. I don't dehydrate just because it's quite dangerous. I don't want to have a heart attack while I'm
that'd probably be
good. So I think the most I've dehydrated was about 2 pounds in World Pro.
Well, that's good.
And that's 24-hour weigh-in, so it's more manipulating your body weight with sodium and fiber and carbohydrate and whatever water will bind to. And that's something I've really learned throughout, like working with Reid and actually reading some good research and data on it. I guess like Lockie being really normal as well and just helping me and not making me feel like I'm a complete bitch when I'm cutting weight helps as well.
Well, I mean, look, I've tried all kinds of crazy stuff with diets, and I've done extremely low carb, and I've done super low calorie, and like when your body goes into that panicky starvation mode, it doesn't care about anything else. Like you're just an awful human being to everyone around you usually, but thanks so much for sharing that, because I think that's really interesting, and I don't think this stuff is talked enough about. Like, I think it's just everybody's cut. We got a competition. And some people, I think, like, can go in and out of that in a healthy way, but others get trapped and they get sucked into that world.
I think the big thing with that is actually there's an interesting book. I think it's called The Blueprint. We've been recently reading, and it's all about heritability and genetics of most traits in people, it talks about most how successful you'll be, or education, or diseases, but also weight, and weight was something like 70% heritable. So I used to be perhaps a little bit judgy to people, because for me it's like, well, if you don't eat, or you eat the right stuff and you exercise, it's calories in, calories out, you will lose weight. And that's still true, but it's definitely much harder for some people. So and especially girls with cycles and water retention and so on, it's actually
hormones
quite
and
difficult.
All that kind of stuff.
It makes a big difference. But there is a massive, like the twin studies they've done where they've separated twins like at birth for whatever reason, and you could be in the healthiest family, where they never eat junk food and so on, versus the other twin that might be lower socioeconomic area, or the whole family's obese, and it basically has no influence on the adopted twin. And it just makes me think, like a lot of it is heritable. Just because it's easy for me doesn't mean I'm better or I'm more committed or disciplined. It just might not be the right thing for other people. And you have to just do what, like, for example, for me, I feel great when I cut weight I feel strong when I compete.
Right.
Some people hate it. Some people feel really weak, and it's just not for them. So I think you have to find your own weight class and where you feel the best, mentally and physically. I think it's really important.
Well, one thing you said that's really interesting that you mentioned earlier is just this idea. Everybody's obsessed with the six pack, right? Everybody's got to have abs. And I see people like you, and I have a friend, there's a girl here, Lindsay Garbett, who's a professional fighter. I love her. She's great. She's got a six pack like all the time. And what I don't think people understand is that some people can get there easier than others. Like you even said earlier, I had it and I wasn't really trying. And I see people falling into that trap where you might be able to get a six-pack abs, but you're going to be really, really unhealthy.
Miserable. Right? And miserable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that that's so important. My sister always tells me, she always talks about the set point theory, that there seems to be a lot of science to suggest that your body wants to optimally be in a range. And it might be heavier than what you want to be, and you might look quote unquote fatter than you want to look, but your body hormonally functions better there. Your brain works better there. And so I think there's a lot of pressure on people to get a six pack and be jacked. And some people can get there easier than others. And I think some people think that that's an excuse,
Yeah, I completely agree. There's body types as well. Yeah. Like I've got girlfriends that, will be tiny, and no matter how much fat they lose, like they just don't have a six pack. But, like a six pack will never make you better at jiu-jitsu. Not one.
Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Are better than abs. That's something I've discovered. Just like it's just a cool feeling, like going to the beach and I'm like, I'm jacked, I'm ripped. But it is like generally because I'm probably not eating enough for how much I'm working out as a result of just a busy lifestyle. Yeah.
Well, it brings up this interesting point that has been hammered home for me too, because I've put on weight since lockdown, but I was probably under eating. And now that I've kind of settled back and I'm, my I've put on weight, I'm not that happy, but I feel mentally, I feel better, all this stuff, right? Like when I look in the mirror, I'm like, but but you know what I mean? Like I had like abs and the whole bit, but for me, I don't think my body wants to be there because it's basically a full-time job of overtraining and under eating to get there. Absolutely. And this point of training for aesthetics versus performance are often, they're not always as closely aligned as you'd think, right? Everybody thinks that when you get in great shape, you're going to be ripped to the bone. Some people are in incredible shape, but they don't look necessarily like they're jacked, Do you agree with that?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, if you want to train for aesthetics, then do bodybuilding if that's what you want to do, or go and do toning exercises, whatever that is.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like. The best I feel about myself is when I'm disgusting with my hair everywhere and I'm red and it's up to training, like with my teammates, because we've just tried to kill each other and it's fun. Like, exactly. And so endorphins is what's important to me, not the way I look. But of course, like everyone thinks about it. It's just not going to make you better at jiu-jitsu. Like it just never will.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless obviously, like, you have to be fit enough and strong enough to sustain training and competition. But being a little bit bigger as well for me now, rolling with Lockie or the boys is much nicer as well. Like I don't get quite as hurt. My ribs don't hurt as much. So being a little bit sturdier is nice as well.
Yeah, your body's more resilient, right? There's a lot of impact and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, look, I kind of wanted to move on just a little bit. I wonder, you go back to school, you're doing your degree, you get into jiu-jitsu. And I just wonder, can you talk to me a little bit about your road then in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a woman? Was it any, like, especially the early days were kind of different than they are now. Were there any like parallels to the gymnastics world? And have you had a pleasant experience in Jiu-Jitsu, or has it been a little bit dicey at times with the culture when you first started?
It was mainly positive, actually. Okay. I mean, I started and I promised myself I would never like compete and I would never do sport.
Sure.
I just get obsessive, and I was like, right, now I'm going to be doing uni, and I need to earn money as an adult, and it's enough for being an elite athlete and for crappy sponsorship. And
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I was like, it's time to grow up, and that lasted about 3 months. So I sort of met Lockie at around the same time as we met in doing physiotherapy for a football club, and
Okay.
I just stopped cycling, and I was just looking for something to do. So I was doing a bit of Muay Thai with my brother at a local club, and they had jiu-jitsu there. And
Sure.
then I met Lockie, and he was doing jiu-jitsu, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll try it. Like, it looks weird. And there was
Yeah,
another
it does.
girl at the gym, and we thought, like, let's just try it. So we
Yeah.
just giggled the whole way, and Lockie was like, oh no, you're one of those. Don't ever giggle again. And I was like, it was just nerves.
Yeah.
But shortly after, probably about 4 weeks after, I did Brazil just with my sister for a holiday, and I
Okay.
got really sick of drinking. So I was like, I'm gonna do jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
So I just went to Checkmat, and my experience there, like with Rico Vieira
Yep.
and all the guys, that were super nice to me, and to the point where
Good.
they pretty much gave me a free private. Like, I had a black belt dedicated to give me a private every day during training. And I was telling Lockie, I was like, jiu-jitsu guys are great.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
nice. And he's like, yeah, because I'm sure they would give a white belt gringo guy a private every day. And
exactly.
I was like, oh, okay.
They're just being I don't know, they're being so nice to me. I don't get it. I don't understand.
The people are so nice.
Yeah.
In fairness, they weren't, outwardly sleazy, I guess.
Yeah.
So it made me kind of really like it.
Yeah. Sure.
And when I got back, I just started training properly. And with being a woman, look, I actually never had that many problems. When I first started competing, white and blue, I did have to fight guys quite a lot, like in the round robins in the local comps.
Oh, you did? Wow. Okay. Because there just weren't enough women.
Yeah, there's just and sometimes, like at white belt or blue belt, sometimes I would beat the occasional really light guy. But I think it's an awkward thing because guys will generally go just a little bit lighter because it's weird fighting a girl. And when they lose, it's like, well, I should have gone. Like, everyone makes fun of them for losing to a female. It's like, oh, look, a girl. Or like, there's memes floating around. And I just don't think it's really good for the guys where it they might have been going a little bit lighter. I don't know. And then the other one, no one wants to bash up a girl either. You're not the hero if you're bashing up a girl in a competition. So it's a weird dynamic.
Sure.
I do remember having a guy, I just got my blue belt, I think a day before, and a guy beat me, and he posted online. He was a white belt, and he said, like, oh, I beat a blue belt today. And someone wrote, like, yeah, you just didn't mention that she was a 150 girl.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of that kind of, like, sort of lying in BJJ. Yeah, exactly. I won gold today, but there was also no one in my division, kind of thing,
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't had to, like, my first coach was extremely, I didn't train with Lockie for a while, till a little bit later in my jiu-jitsu, like till blue belt, I think, or purple even.
Okay.
And my first coach was extremely technical and an amazing coach, but also a little bit abusive to the point,
okay.
like, he wanted me to do so well. He would, like, call me names and make me cry. And one day I would, I don't cry often.
And this is Lachlan?
No,
yes. No, I know.
Like, I can't pass guard, and Lockie's like, why would you do something that makes you cry? Like, why don't you just quit? He's like, I don't understand why you do a sport that you come home and you cry. And I was like, oh, yeah, maybe that's not a normal coaching behavior.
Yeah,
like, I didn't even know. And ever since then, of course, there's less women and there's less opportunities for us because the depth isn't quite there. But when we first started at our club, I was the only female, and we didn't have even really a change room for women, just because it was a tiny place and there was no space. So of course you're going to make, the change room, the one change room we had is for males, but we did have one toilet, and sometimes the guys would go in it because there was no girls except for me. And we literally had to, like, stand in front of the class, Lockie and I, and go, like, if you have a dick, don't go into the female toilets. And they were like, why? And so
you haven't. That's amazing that you have to explain that. That's unbelievable. Yeah.
Don't go there. This is why women don't come here,
Yeah.
But I think the culture is now amazing. We
Yeah.
have, I teach classes. Hope Douglas, who's another black belt. We have some brown belt girls teach classes, like two men. I often get asked, like, oh, do you look after the kids and the women? Like, yes, I do, but I also teach seminars to men, and I
Yeah.
coach men, like, because it's just jiu-jitsu. There's no men or women,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we have a really big girls team, and we try just as hard, and we're very
Of
successful at
course. Yeah.
competitions. Yeah, I can't say I've experienced that much
No, that's
sexism.
good. I didn't assume you did. I just, obviously having the
Yeah,
experience you did, I just wonder if there were any parallels. It's good to hear that you've had
yeah,
a positive
yeah.
experience overall, you know?
I think, yeah, look, when we're talking about parallels, probably cycling is worse. Like, so especially back in my day, it was literally run by older, like everyone on the board was an older men,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay,
they
interesting.
just did not like women. Yeah, they didn't like women racing bikes because that's not what women do. So to give you an example, I
Okay.
won this big race in Australia called the Austral Wheel Race, and we do the same amount of laps as the men, and I won it. I got a spare tire and $25, and the men got $10,000 for the same race
Wow.
on the same night as the main event. And I was like,
A
that doesn't
spare
even cover my.
Did you say a
I'm
spare
like,
tire? You got a spare
spare
tire.
tire. Like, what am I going to do with one? Why
That's
one?
oh my god.
Yeah, so I was
That's
like, at
brutal.
least give me $200 out of the men's $10,000 pool, And look, that's all changing as well,
Yeah.
but I found cycling was definitely more sexist than even like the things I experienced in jiu-jitsu.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Well, it's cool to see. I mean, I think I saw a video of you talking about sort of the development and the evolution of your women's program. And I think that's interesting. I had another girl from Toronto BJJ here, and they've got a great women's community. So I think it's really cool. It
Yeah.
seems to be growing. So
Yeah.
it's good to see that you've got that kind of support. Because I mean, it's intimidating for women to start. I mean,
Yeah.
I have an older sister who used to train at an all women's gym because you go to the gym and everyone's grunting and staring at you.
Yeah.
So I would imagine like I can't. I've found jujitsu intimidating, obviously, but to start, but I can't imagine being like even a smaller female. It must be a tough thing to
Yeah.
get into. So
I think so. I do think, I never cared. I was just like,
right,
I'll just do whatever. But there are a lot of women, not a lot, but there are women that, might be survivors of domestic or sexual
exactly.
abuse,
Yep.
and that's why they join, and that can be very intimidating. We do have an intro program. So for your first like 8 lessons, you go to intro program, and it's just very general. So we teach like a series of techniques. It might be
Sure.
like double leg to mount to a rear naked choke, and the next day it's an escape from a rear naked from the back and whatever. But every day we talk about like what is drilling, what to wear, like take your makeup off, how to roll with a smaller person. So we actually
Yep.
tell them all the unspoken rules.
Oh,
But
that's
still, the
great.
problem is that there might be 10 guys and one female. And I was like, you might as well go to fundamentals where there's 20 women on the mat, because here I probably wouldn't keep doing it if I just had like crazy newbies
Yeah.
to experience as your first role. I think it's, yeah, I think it's beautiful where you get to experience like someone not even trying, and you can't move and they can submit you.
Yeah.
And yeah, when you don't experience that, I think it's pretty scary for new girls.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you have any tips for women starting BJJ? Just since you teach and you're a successful competitor, is there anything that you would suggest for women that might be a little bit on the fence?
I think it's like definitely worth staying with it, and it gets way better. Like it
Yeah.
just gets so
Yeah.
much better, that one day there will be a new girl or someone smaller that comes along, and then you do your first submission or your first sweep, and it's
Yeah.
so satisfying, and you realize that technique actually works. I think it's also, I never started for self-defense reasons, but just having that ability to defend yourself and be a little bit more wary and aware of your surroundings on the street. And I do teach also like self-defense and close personal protection to pilots and doctors and so on, and being able to go like, yeah, actually I could choke you at any time, like
Yeah,
probably if
exactly.
you don't touch me, because I don't know how to defend that. But
Yeah.
and I think it's what you're actually getting into with jiu-jitsu, as you would know, is the community, and it's
Yeah,
like it's
absolutely.
the thing that keeps me happy. It's
Yeah.
such a cool community. I do feel for the girls that There's a lot of girls, especially like in more rural areas, that don't have any female training partners, and they
Right.
literally just have guys that are way bigger than themselves. And I think you either have to do open mats or consider, finding female training partners, because it's always different, or really you have to teach the guys how to roll.
Sure.
And I think as a younger belt, I used to get quite annoyed at guys and be like, you're a shit roll, or, you just don't know what you're doing. And I was probably not very nice. And I'm much kinder now, because I do have now girls that are smaller than me or a lower level. And I know how hard it is to control yourself, that you are giving something back and you're not being condescending, just lying there, but you're not also hurting the person. So I think like actually being nice about speaking out how to roll with you and what's too much and what's too little is a big skill.
Yeah.
It's just hard to do when you're a beginner.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think those are some great insights, because there's so many people that would probably love it and do great at it, but they're kind of like, so that's why even on the podcast I want to have people like you on, because I think it's really cool. I think when you see female competitors that are world class and elite, and you're not Gabby Garcia, you're a smaller fit and I mean it's good, right? Because it gives people kind of a goal or someone to look up to. So
I was going to say, like with, a lot of girls, I think, have this impression that just because you're a black belt, you can tap any guy. And like, I can't. If it's a world-class blue belt guy, I'm done, like you have to be realistic. And I'm not fighting to compare myself with men. They're just your training tool, as you are to them. So I think you have to get out of this idea that you're trying to beat anyone at training and that you can beat all the guys just because you're a higher belt. You're comparing apples and oranges. I can beat an untrained man, but I can't beat a world-class blue or purple belt.
But that's not unique to being a male to female comparison. That happens all the time. Like, so it's nothing to be ashamed of or disrespect. I mean, my God, like I'm a black belt. There's young guys that are coming up that are training like animals, and like, I'm not getting any younger like these, so it's, I think the misconception, sometimes people think the black belt will never, ever lose to anybody that's lower, is just kind of crazy, especially in this day and age when no gi is different than gi. And you got people that are training professionally from day one. Like, it's a nice achievement, but it's still a relative thing in a lot of ways, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So don't feel bad about that, because I've got some blue belt guys I've been rolling with, and these kids are animals, and they're coming at me. They're coming for my neck every time I roll with them.
Absolutely.
I want to get into your competition a little bit. I mean, it's amazing to me. You had so much success early on. You win worlds at blue belt, but you were still in school. Is that true?
Yeah, no, I think I just graduated. I had a full-time job. So I did my first blue belt worlds, and I was very average. Like I was okay, but I was pretty average. And I think it wasn't, I don't know, I lost in second or third round or something. And I remember I swept the girl who beat me and then became the world champion. And I got off the mat and I said to Lockie, like, I'm going to win it next year. I just swept a world champion. And he was like, yeah, but she submitted you. And I was like, nah, I'm good. And he was like, just do it for fun. Like, you're 27, you know, like, and I was like, no, I'm serious. I think I can. Like, it's not, I didn't feel like these girls were superhuman, and he was like, right, well, if you want to win worlds, you kind of need a guard and you need to know how to pass. Because I was just like,
just a couple things. Like, you just got to add a couple things to the game. Yeah, exactly.
You just you need to learn skill.
Yeah.
So we actually came home and we wrote a plan, and it was really cool because we kind of went, right, what's going to be your main guard? And I think it was like single leg X.
Okay.
I was obsessed with Marcelo Garcia back then, and it was really new school,
Yeah, single leg X was cutting edge. Yeah, back then. Yeah, exactly.
God. And so we kind of made a drilling plan and specific training plan for a whole year. And the plan was for every single position to lead me into single leg X, because I knew that if I got there, I would most likely sweep or submit. So I would practice left and right, top and bottom from every single position. And I would bribe people with coffee and bagels to turn up 2 hours before training. And, and that year, because it was structured and it was planned out and I had goals, I would go into competitions and do open weight just to pull guard, and just like my only goal was to like get single leg X. And sometimes I would pull mount and like do weird stuff. But when Worlds came, like I was like, I guess I didn't know how high level the girls were as well,
Yeah.
And it's really cool in that division that year. It was like Tamiris and Talita, and like all the girls are still on the podium at black belt. We're in that division.
Well, so it was a bunch of killers
And I
back
just like
then
I was
too,
just
yeah.
on a roll that day. Oh, I know, right? And then I literally I had 6 fights and I didn't have a point scored against me that year, and
Wow.
I won everything with exactly what we practiced, and it was like just such a beautiful ending to that blue belt, because it was like we wrote out this year and I stuck to it and I did like every little thing that Lockie wrote out, and then it doesn't always happen like that, of course. I know that now, but it just so happened I wasn't injured. I had good refs. Like I had the great mindset. My weight was good. Like everything just went run for the day. And
you bribed the refs with bagels and coffee. Yeah, that's how it works.
I did that well.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I remember thinking, like, well, now no one can take that away from me. I'm like just like an old girl. I started when I was 25 from Australia, who like won. Well, I mean, like, for an elite competitor to start when you're 25, not young. I guess like Mendes retired by 25.
Yeah, exactly.
Like so, and I thought, well, like that's it. I don't need to do anything else. And I thought, if I can do it at blue, why not at purple? Why not at brown? And then it's like, well, why can't we do it just because we're from Australia? And it kind of snowballed, and all the girls in Australia, I mean, there's obviously girls before me. I don't claim to be the first one by any means. And the ones that came before me, I looked up to them and went, oh, well, they're not that, like, they're not superhuman. If they can do it, maybe I can as well. And it does snowball. It's really cool.
Well, it's funny. I was gonna kind of ask you that anyway, but I've had so many awesome people on, and I asked Lachlan about this as well. And it's like the theme that kind of kept coming up with a lot of these successful people is like, a lot of people have like that vision, like you're a competitive person, you want to be a world champion, and you have that drive. But you're right. It's these little tiny moments where you're like, oh, okay, like I can do this, right? Like it's an evolution of the confidence. It's like it's not just like you said I'm going to be a world champion and that was it. It's like you have these little moments where like even just the thought of you being able to sweep a world champion, suddenly you thought, oh, I can win this, right? And then you sticking to this game plan and winning at blue, you think, oh, maybe I can win it at purple. And then maybe I can win outside of Australia or this or that. So it's really cool to hear you guys climb to the top of the mountain. For the average person, it's cool to hear that you're all starting at, you have such competitive experience, but it still was a climb for you. Like it wasn't just, oh, Livia stepped on the mat and blew the doors off the place, right?
No, I mean, I think like even as a first year blue belt, I probably had something like competed like 50 times,
Wow.
and I lost a lot. Like I think everyone always kind of remembers the wins,
which is good.
A lot. Yeah, I still like I stuffed up at ADCC and I got choked, and then my next comp was like Nogi Worlds and I got guillotined in the first minute, and I just go like, fuck, like it's not that shit. Like I'm actually good. I just stuffed up in that one split second, and I think that's the difference between black belt and other belts. You stuff up and often like that's it. There's no coming back, So I do lose a lot, and I'm not a born champion or whatever people say. I train extremely hard. In saying that, I get that there's probably, having done other sports probably helps, not so much with skill, but I think motor coordination and awareness, but also just knowing how to push myself. Like I think jiu-jitsu is still not really a professional sport in terms of like having sports science and an actual coach rather than, it's an instructor. And I'm not like Lockie is very much into me being self-directed as well. He definitely doesn't take my hand and baby me by any means. And it's a sport where you really have to be self-driven. And although I do it for like right now, especially during Corona times, I definitely don't do it for medals. I do it because I freaking love it.
Yeah.
But I am competitive and I love winning, and that's okay.
No, and I think that's great. I mean, it's I'm not a born champion, but you're a born competitor, I think. There's that fire in you, which I think is a key element to a lot of this.
I think so. And some people just don't enjoy it, and you're probably not going to force it. And that's, that's just, everyone's on a different journey, I think.
Well, what's so funny is that people, what's cool about you, and I want to ask you about a couple things specifically, is that you don't get the people like you that make it to the top, is that you don't get derailed by failure, right? Nobody goes out, like, I don't care if you're a world champion or not, you're competitive. You don't want to go out and get smashed at blue belt, right? But a lot of people, they retreat. It's the negativity, and they don't keep pushing. And what I think is cool about you is you lose, but then you get smarter from it. You come back with a game plan and you lay this out. And it's like, I see people that are black belts and have been training that never do that. They kind of train and then they go into a tournament. And this idea of you having strategy and constantly upping your game, I think, is such an important part of why you're successful.
Yeah, I think, part of, like, and Lockie's the same. We really enjoy learning and just getting better. And my game evolves so much every year. It's, I do different things. And I think that's the fun part in it. But yeah, you're right. Like, every time I lose, you learn a lot more because it still burns. I have losses that still, I think about late at night, the twice I lost like a medal at Worlds by like some stupid advantage because I was like too greedy, and I still think about that. Like, I stew on it probably a little bit too much, but you're right. Like, I go to the gym and I go, right, let's rewatch it. Where did it go wrong? How come I didn't work? What do I need to change? And the other thing, because I have been quite injured, especially with my knee, I don't have an ACL. I actually tore it twice. I had pretty significant career-affecting injuries. And being able to adapt, like even before ADCC Trials, I'm jumping ahead a bit, but before ADCC Trials, I changed my complete game 2 weeks before. Like, it was actually, that's when we first started doing K-guard, and I was going like single X into leg entanglement, and I just started to get passed a lot more at the gym just because everyone was obviously improving as well. And I was like, this is not working. And then Lockie's like, okay, you're going to do De La Hiva and K-guard. And I was like, I've only like drilled it for a week. And then that's what we did, So I think just being able to be adaptable. If like blue belt Liv was like, okay, I pull guard, I go single leg X, I sweep or submit, and I get on top. And that doesn't always happen, so now it's like, okay, my guard pull didn't work, but I have so many other tools to work with. So I think being adaptable in your, just with everything, just filling it out with scrambles or whatever, like a ref's decision or points you don't get, you actually have to just adapt on the fly. And I think that's super important if you want to compete.
What is it sort of about your mentality, though? Like, you've kind of hinted at it and said a lot of interesting things, but what is it about you that allows you, and how do you deal with setbacks mentally? Like, whether it's at ADCC or whatever, I just wonder, like, you're losing at blue belt. Why is it that somebody like you continues to go where somebody else might not, right? They back away. What is your mentality after a loss? Do you just use that fuel and it burns, and so you try to make something constructive out of it? Or is there something more to it than that?
I don't know, because I honestly think, and I mean, not to discredit anybody, but I think people who get really like disheartened after a loss for a very long time, not just like, the pissed off on the Sunday after the loss. I think they might be doing jiu-jitsu for the wrong reasons, or not the wrong reasons, but the wrong mentality, Whereas I to get better at jiu-jitsu, I've never trained to get a black belt, or I've never trained, I've trained to win a world, but I've trained to improve it, like the steps that would help me to get to, like what will help me to win worlds, and improving those skills, not just going, I'm going to be a world champion, So I think if you look at jiu-jitsu that way, then the losses become a little bit easier to deal with. And I've definitely gotten better at it. I used to cry and carry on, and I think and then realize you're not that special and no one actually cares. Because no one cares. And I get over it a lot quicker. I used to work a lot with a sports psychologist as well. I haven't seen him for quite some time, but what used to help me as a lower belt was every competition I did, I would write 3 things I did well and 3 things I could improve on. So no matter, like, even if people sub in like even if I would like, someone flying triangled me, I really didn't do anything well, but you know what? I breathed and I said my mantra, and I walked on the mat first and shook the hand first, and I made the first grip. And that was really well done. Like, so
Yep.
I always, I hated giving myself props for that because, you know, we all know I stuffed up, but I think like there's still things you can be proud of, and there's still things you did well, even if it's breathing.
Right.
And not like having a complete panic attack or whatever it might be for you. Yeah.
So it's not it. Yeah, and it sounds easy to say, but it's hard to do. But you can't. You're not a black and white thinker, right? It's not good or bad. No. It's in the middle. And the reason I ask is I'm fascinated because I beat myself up a lot. You know, I have to challenge myself that way. And it can be a good thing and a bad thing, but I've really learned to kind of make better use of it in a lot of ways. And that's why I kind of started to do better, is I understood that it was a process, and like anything, I'm going to go and I'm going to have a good day out of the mats in a tournament. And then other days I'm going to get my ass kicked. And if you can look at it as a long view, it's easier to take than, well, I lost, I'm terrible, end of story, I quit jiu-jitsu. But you'd be surprised at how many people it scares them and it makes them feel inferior, and it really rattles them personally. So I just love those little insights, because I think it can help the average person be like, oh, okay, Liv is like that and Lachlan's like that, because you both have this love for learning, it sounds like, and you're enjoying the process, as cheesy as it sounds. It's not...
It's true.
The medal's great, but it wears off, but the journey getting there is what you remember in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think like, and on top of that, like if you can persevere enough to get like it's something you've really wanted, and eventually it will probably pay off. It's the best feeling in the world, especially after all the failures, you know. I've had a few of them where I'm like, holy shit, I've stayed in it for long enough to actually, for it to pay off. The other thing is, I think like Lockie is a really good example for me. He's extremely analytical, and like he gets, you know, he gets mad when he doesn't win or he stuffs up, but he'll literally be like, okay, I'm over it. And then he'll just go like, yep, well, they were better than me on that day, and this is what I have to fix. And then he'll work like next 6 months to fix that thing. And like looking at that, I was like, how are you not like still angry? And he's like, well, what's that going to help? And I even though it's really hard to do myself, I think watching that and looking at like how much it fuels his progression really helps as well. Whereas if you had a coach that just like cracks the shits and like, I think you're more likely to behave like that.
Well, he thinks like an academic. He thinks like a scientist, which is is the best way to be. Like I said to him, is I love that he's able to separate himself from the result. It's not, I lose, I'm stupid, I'm bad, I'm dumb. It's, okay, this failed because my foot was here and my hand position was here. And if you're able to separate the two, it makes way more sense than just it's this character flaw that I can never overcome. You know, that's what I kind of took from him, which I thought was cool.
And it goes the other way, you know, like you win ADCC medal and it doesn't make you a better person. Like it's a really cool personal achievement, but Lockie has not changed one bit, no matter how much he's won or what he did. And that's, I think you don't define your self-worth on your losses or your wins, which is hard. It's obviously it's hard to do because we associate ourselves with that. And I do to an extent as well, but less and less so. The older and wiser. As we get older
and realize. I do want to ask you just a bit about what I found really fascinating was your brown belt world championship, because there's a blog that you put out in 2016 where you talk about the complete shit show that was the preparation for that. And I don't want to embarrass you or put you on the spot. It's just, I think we see people that win and we think, oh, everything goes, there's Liv winning, everything's going well. And I just had a couple excerpts here from your blog. Is that okay if I read them? No, it's just so on top of the fact you're going through this brutal weight cut, which sounded rough, but we've kind of talked about the weight piece. But this is what you say. You said 5 days out, you tore your LCL 5 days out, and you said, I cried standing up from closed guard. I cried when I couldn't make myself shoot a double leg as my knee felt unstable. I cried when I couldn't triangle, and I cried because I felt sorry for myself. Basically, I was a big mess. But then you go on to say that you still had to cut weight. So on top of this, your knee doesn't work, but you're going to the gym 2 to 3 times a day on a stationary bike or treadmill. And you sit there saying at the end, you said, I had no idea if I would compete. I didn't know if I could make weight. And you're sitting there on a bike hating life. Just tell me a little bit about that behind the scenes, because that is so fascinating. Because what's crazy is you end up winning, I think, your world championship. One of the matches, you hit a triangle, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what the, like,
yeah.
but to me,
It was
look,
the other
yeah,
side.
I don't know, but just tell me a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think with the weight cut, I mean, I got to, I don't know what it is in pounds, but I think I got to about 100 pounds and nothing else would come off. But I had like literally, I'll send you a photo later, but I had like veins on my back.
Oh my
We were in New
God.
York at Marcelo's, and Lockie was training at Unity, but he didn't allow me to go to Unity because it was too hard. Like training at Marcelo's was, A, it wasn't as hot, and B, it was probably like a little bit less intense and shorter in duration.
Okay. Yep.
So he was like, I think you'll die if you go to Unity. So I was going training at Marcelo's, and I think because I was so like I was just like a twig, and I rolled with poor Erin Hurley, and I tore my LCL with her. She literally we didn't even do anything. It just broke because I was so skinny. And I remember Marcelo also going like, why? Because I must have looked like just, I looked bad. And he was like, why are you cutting this weight? Like, stop it. And I'm like, well, I can't now because I've come all this way.
Yeah.
And I have to see it through because it was only like, probably about 4 pounds to go. And I thought like, I can't put myself through this hell for 6 weeks and then go, nah, fuck it.
Yeah, I'm good. I just peace out. I'll see you guys next year. Yeah.
Yeah, like it just wasn't an option. I was like, I have to see it through. But of course, I had to keep burning calories. Like I struggled to walk for about 2 days. So I think at the start, I couldn't even go on the treadmill. So I was sitting on that hand bike thing, and I was like, I don't know how people do this for fun. Like I think I was at this gym just crying.
They are miserable. they are miserable, but yeah.
It was bad. Like I can't even comprehend that I did that, because I remember I had a Skype catch up with my dietitian around the same time, and I texted it because I went for a walk. I just did a lot of walking when my knee was okay, just to keep burning calories and not to eat more at home. And I texted him going like, I'm going to be 2 minutes late because I'm late because I walked past a chicken shop and I started crying because of the smell.
Oh my God. I think I read that actually. I didn't want to, I wasn't going to read that, but I thought, yeah, it's pretty good.
It was like, it was just crazy. And then he like called me and he's like, you need to go to the fridge, open the fridge and like eat some carbs because your brain is melting and it's not good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And look, I think my test was going to Unity with Lockie during the drilling session, and he was like, it's about 5 days out. He's like, if you can't shoot, if you can't do a triangle and like some things, you're not competing. And it was just painful, and I was just like drilling and crying because I was hungry. And then I remember
there's a lot of crying going on during this training camp. There's just a lot of tears.
I don't usually cry. Like,
yeah,
this is crazy, Liv. And I think because Bones was the instructor, and he walked towards me to give me some feedback, and he just like looked at me and he was like, and just walked away. Everyone was like, don't go near her. Yep. And look, on the day, I think the night before I was like, I made it, like I'm gonna make weight, and I just couldn't believe it. I think I weighed like 46 kilos, which is like absolutely ridiculous.
So basically you're back to where you were as 7 years old as a gymnast. Pretty much. Yeah. Okay.
And not fat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I actually hated myself at that weight. I remember I just felt like a little teenage boy.
Yeah.
And I had this gap between my thighs, and I was like, I miss my thighs. Like everything is gross. No clothes fit me. And that was a really good insight into like going, being skinny doesn't make your life better. It makes it worse.
Yeah.
And I think those worlds, there was only I think 4 of us or 5 of us in the division, so it was definitely I don't know if it was an easier division, but the depth wasn't quite as high as in the other divisions.
Still, I mean, it's a world championship. So.
Yeah, but I think I had a similar mindset to my blue belt worlds where I was like, I've come this far, like no one can take this away from me. I remember like warming up and actually like singing out loud and just not giving a crap what anyone thought. And so that was probably like, jiu-jitsu. I think I got 2 subs and I wasn't as proud of my jiu-jitsu that comp, but I was extremely proud on like how I handled, or I didn't handle it that well, but that I've actually cut weight and I actually achieved that, and never to be done again, but I did it.
It's just, I like these little behind the scenes stories because, you see the world championship and like, I don't know, like you think, oh yeah, everybody assumes they know what it's like, but that's a pretty remarkable story. I mean, did at any point, did you say like, I'm done, or were the whole time were you basically like, I'm going to do this no matter what?
I think I was certain I was going to do it, but I am deluded at times, like because I did that. And then I also I competed at, I did Copa Podio 3 weeks after I tore my ACL. And
I know, I was going to ask you about that. That's insane.
Yeah. So like, I was like, okay, I mean, it's all with consultation with physicians and a surgeon and so on. So like, I'm not ever really silly, but so I did that and I won and I was okay. And then I redid my ACL probably 10 days before EBI and
by
World.
Redo it, you mean you injured it again?
Yeah, so well, there's new data coming out that ACLs can actually regrow. So I never had it surgically repaired.
Oh wow, okay, I didn't think that was possible.
Yeah, it's actually like that's where the research is heading these days. If you're like a person that can cope without an ACL and be very strict with your rehab, which I am, you can actually be quite successful without the surgery.
Wow. Okay.
So like I won wrestling nationals and other things without an ACL, but then I was cutting weight again for EBI.
Seems like a theme here. Yeah, it seems like the knee ligaments are not enjoying starvation mode.
I didn't do it. I was miserable, and then I gave 3.5 months of rehab and 1 ADCC trials. So that was cool.
That's unbelievable. I just actually like, I'm going to get to ADCC in a second. I just wonder, like, what kind of a competitor are you? You have such an extensive background in gymnastics and cycling and jiu-jitsu. Are you a nervous competitor? Like, I just wonder, like, because people like me, I would see somebody like you, and I say this to a lot of people, but I see them and I think they're probably not nervous. Do you get a lot of anxiety, and how do you deal with it if you do? Like, what's your sort of mind frame before you get onto the mats? Are you scared? What's going through your head?
My pants so much. I get extremely nervous.
Okay.
But look, every comp is a little bit different. Like probably ADCC was like, I was extremely nervous. Some comps, like especially like the showcases, like the invitational pro comps, I don't get as nervous because I'm just like, fuck yeah, like we're under the lights and I'm pumped more than anything. And some days I'm terrible. Some days I'm not nervous at all. But general theme is, yes, I get very, very nervous. I try not to judge it anymore. I think good advice, my blue belt days actually from my sports psychologist was, I just want to feel the same as I did when I won blue belt worlds. Because and he was like, he just laughed at me. He's like, yeah, but if you would have happened to lose that, you would remember it as you were really nervous and things didn't go right. So it didn't happen like that. But, what he also said to me is like, do you think Roger Federer feels amazing every time he wins or loses? Like, do you think he can replicate that mindset every time? And I was like, probably not. So he's like, out of 300 games, he might feel great for 3 of them. It's rare.
Yep.
So I think what I've started to do is like, okay, I wake up and I'm super nervous and I go, okay, I'm super nervous. I'm going to get up and fight. Or like I had no sleep because my anxiety was through the roof and I was freaking out all night and I didn't get to sleep till 4. And you wake up really tired and you go, cool, I'm going to get up and fight. Or you feel amazing and you go, cool, today I feel amazing, I'm going to get up and fight. So I think that really helps me. And no matter how I'm feeling, I can just go, okay, this is what it is. When I step on the mat, everything changes and I can generally switch it on. Like sometimes now I go like, man, some of the things I've won, I feel like I've outperformed myself, like to some other girls that I think are probably more technical, but I don't know, sometimes I just get up. Like it doesn't have to be pretty sometimes, like even though I want my jiu-jitsu to be pretty and I want to be known as a technical fighter, sometimes like go just like the bitch up, like just get up.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes that sometimes that helps.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's so true. You bring up a couple points too that I found really interesting. Is one is just accepting that you feel that way. Like I know so many people, and I've struggled with a lot of mental health and anxiety my whole life, and I've always found that the more I sort of say, well, why is this happening? Why? And I try to push it away, it just becomes a monster. And it's just this idea of like, I'm going to be nervous. It's like my body, like you become accustomed in a way to like, okay, I'm a little nervous, anxious, but you sort of manage it. And I think that's a big piece. And also this idea of performing under suboptimal conditions. Like I think everybody feels like if they don't feel perfect before they go onto the mat, or especially even training, like, I don't really feel like it today, or I don't feel ready to compete today, it doesn't mean that that's true or a reality, right? Like if you're waiting for the perfect moment, or you're waiting for you to feel 100%, it's probably never going to happen. Does that make sense?
It's not.
Yeah.
I think so. And I mean, like, coming from Australia, where I'm pretty much every time I've competed, I've been jet lagged. It's not like,
yeah.
you know, I went to Brazil for a weekend once. I literally like had a 30-hour flight, slept, competed, flew back. You know, I sometimes I'm asleep like on this, like 40 minutes before a fight because I can't keep my eyes open. And obviously I tried to be a little bit more clever with not losing too much work time at home and not getting there too close to competition. But coming from Australia, like you hardly ever feel 100%, and
that's an interesting piece that people probably don't talk about, right? You guys are flying all over the place. Like I've been to Australia in like 2004, and that was a monster of a flight. Like I don't think you know it's far away, but you don't appreciate it till you've been on a plane for 24 goddamn hours, basically. Do you have any sort of little tips or tricks that, like, when things are going a little sideways in your mind, how do you bring it back into a positive sort of direction?
Yeah, again, I think this is going back to years ago with my sports. Like I used to have, which I don't so much anymore, but I used to have like a lot of, I guess, visions just before I went on the mat that I was like, oh my God, these girls swept me, and then I got submitted.
So
and
you're
I would
seeing
be like,
bad things play out in your head. Okay, yep.
It was just always in my head, like me losing. And I did a lot of exercises where, like, the sports, like exactly what you were saying, you can't fight it. You can't fight your thoughts. You can't go, no, that didn't happen, you know. So
exactly.
Visualize things like, you know, whenever I visualize myself, like the ref raises her hand up, I would be like, in my head, I would like just reverse it and go, then like I would imagine that the ref was like, actually, wait, there's been a mistake. Like you got this advantage. Hand up, like, so I wouldn't fight the thoughts, but I would try to like reverse it in my mind so that my next move was the winning move. Yeah, or like if she took my back and I was like, oh my God, then I would be like, okay, I'm going to get out and pass and submit within a minute, and I would try to visualize that. And I don't really do that anymore because I don't really have like thoughts of me losing that much anymore.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. I still get super nervous, and like even talking about competitions now, I'm like,
but that's I think that's really cool because I'm just so curious to hear. Like I like to kind of dig just a bit because I want to know, you know, because that to me sounds super normal. Like that's how I feel. So it's cool to hear that. You know, because people listening are like, I think our perception of you guys is that you're just. And you are different. I don't mean to say, but I mean, you still have the same thoughts and fears, and it's like, I think it's good to hear that because it's not like you're superheroes. It's like you're just people that are very driven and dedicated, and you go and you just walk through the shit you have to walk through to get to where you want to be. You know,
you just do it. And look, going back to nerves, I think it's also not great to be, well, for me anyway, or for most people, like there's that optimal bell curve of relaxation and adrenaline.
Exactly.
And so
you don't want to be you don't want to be too relaxed, and then you're not going to perform well. Yeah.
No, like when I'm actually the most worried. Like a lot of the Australian comps, like a little bit like that, because I'm either super nervous because I'm fighting friends and everyone's like, oh, Liv's going to win, which doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
Or the other way is, I just have no, like, I'm doing it for points and I don't really want to fight my friends or anything like that. And I have to like slap myself and actually pump myself up and remember that I'm like, it's not a training session. So yeah, sometimes I have to do the opposite and psych myself up rather than calm myself down.
I just wanted to ask you about a couple more things. Is that okay? Are we doing all right? Or if I don't want to, if you're sick of me, then you just let me. Okay. I find a couple things interesting is that you compete in so many different rule sets and gi and no gi, and you've been successful in so many things. How on earth do you manage your training in a way that allows you? Because I don't know, like I find it really hard. Like I've gotten really into no gi, and then I start to wrestle a lot, and then I start to do this, and then my gi game is worse. And like, how on earth can you possibly juggle all that? And what advice do you have for people doing that?
I think it's getting harder and harder.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, look, I feel like it's heading slightly into different two sports direction. It really is. I think the reason why, well, I love gi and I love no gi. And I love wrestling. Like I like to do it all. My first love was gi, but then I obviously love no gi now. Like it's just so much more free, you know.
I'm sure Lachlan corrupted you with the heel hooks as well, right?
Yeah. Like heel hooks is one of those things where I feel like even rolling with guys, of course, when they're much bigger, it's something you can actually, like if I get a clean heel hook on a guy, I know I've got it. Whereas like an armbar, sometimes they can, or like they let me have it. But I'm like, when I get a heel hook, I'm like, oh, it's on and it's actually real, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a cool thing about no-gi. But yeah, I think, look, for girls, there's still not as much opportunities. I think for guys, like a lot of the professional guys, like Craig, Lockie, Gordon, like all of those guys are doing just no-gi because they make a living out of it, and they can put more exciting fights. I think that's subjective, but the fights are generally, there's more scrambles, more submissions. It's a little bit more exciting. Yeah, and it's heading towards that direction. I think for women, we don't quite have the same opportunities yet. You know, like even ADCC is just 2 weight classes. There's not as much
crazy
money.
To me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, I do think winning gi worlds is still one of the hardest things to do. Perhaps harder. I'm going to be slightly controversial, but harder in a way than ADCC, in a way that it's a different rule set, and so you're fighting for advantages and grips, and someone can be way worse than you and tie you up in a worm guard.
Absolutely.
And if you can't get out, you lose. Whereas I think no-gi forces scrambles a lot more, and it's a little bit of an equalizer. I think
it can be for sure.
And not to say that. I do think, like, obviously winning ADCC is like.
What are you trying to say, Livia? We're sending this to Mo right out. We're sending the transcript of this podcast to Mo. No,
great. No, but I do think, like, winning gi worlds, it's not. I'm not saying it's because of skill level at all, but I think the rule set. Yeah. So you have to get through like 8 amazing guys on the day that might put you in a worm guard and you can't do anything, or you lose by an advantage from 50-50 because no one does anything. So it is, it's a hard rule set, I think, to win. I don't know if I do. I usually try to do equal amount of gi and no gi when I'm training normally, when the gym is open.
Well, you did. You used to do that before the world changed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I try, and obviously before ADCC, I wasn't doing that. I was just doing no gi, and it took me a while to get back into gripping stuff and having my grips broken. And I try, not successfully, but I try to have a game that plays like, so your K guard type stuff mixes very well gi and no gi. Lockie's very good at that, where his no gi game will be very similar to his gi game. But I use my sleeves and my spider guard stuff a lot more. So that's why it's getting hard. I think if you want to be, amazing at one thing,
it does seem like they're. I mean, they've always been different, but it's almost like you could take off the gi and it's kind of the same. And now, just the rule set alone, right? It's becoming very niche in either direction, I think. Not necessarily if you want to just roll, but like if you're trying to compete at the elite level, you're starting to see the guys that focus on it exclusively really taking off in either direction. I just wonder, you've talked so much about weight cuts and training. I just wondered, like, what are your perspective on sort of nutrition and dieting for jiu-jitsu? There's so many people that fall into like the low carb thing, and there's all these wacky diets. Is there a sort of philosophy that you like to follow in terms of eating? Like, what's your perspective on that? The best way to sort of fuel your body for something like jiu-jitsu?
I don't think I have a philosophy apart from like what's evidence-based and best data. And I think still in like and obviously I'm not a dietitian, but from as far as I'm concerned, there's not like really clear-cut ways of evidence-based way of eating. Everyone's like, there's so many different studies and they're very hard to control variables. So I think it's hard to know what's actually best, but like honestly, just eat food.
Yeah.
I think like eating normal food, eating like enough to fuel your body. I think eating enough is really important, and that's something I
Right.
was guilty of in the past. Enough that you can recover and gain mass if that's what you're aiming to do. I think fresh food always feels better. Like I try to eat, you know, a lot of vegetables. When I'm cutting weight, I'll eat like a kilo of veggies a day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's a lot, but it
Yeah.
fills your stomach. I'm trying to, you know, not skip on food groups. Like I have treats. In terms of supplements, I think before ADCC, I was taking creatine because it's got good evidence and
Yeah, interesting.
And it can help with like it's actually one of the best supplements that's legal, obviously. And what else? Zinc and magnesium.
I think steroids are legal too in ADCC. It's totally cool. You're allowed to, yeah, just take them for ADCC. You're good.
It's free for all in ADCC.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
That's not my philosophy, but it is. You're right. It's
no, I'm
banned.
kidding. Of course, I'm kidding. Yeah.
I mean, like each to their own. You know, I think it's unfair. But yeah, some people have different views. I think definitely if you're competing in IBJJF or World Pro, it's they don't often test as much as they say they would, or at all. So that's a problem. But yeah, I think like supplements, I might have a protein shake here and there. I think zinc magnesium has been shown to have some effect on better sleep quality. So sometimes I'll take that. And then beta alanine is another one, makes your skin tingle. So I don't always love it. But that's about it. I have coffee as a pre-workout, which I'm trying to cut out a little bit. But yeah, look, honestly, we just eat healthy and have a treat. Exactly.
It's good. These are good points because I think we get so caught up in the supplement industry, and I think like you said, there are some supplements with some science behind them, like the creatine, but a lot of them is just bullshit. And the idea of eating, you know, real whole foods and enough of them to fuel your workouts is really key, I think.
Absolutely. And if you have like a pizza and ice cream, it's not going to make a difference. Like I actually like, you know, I used to worry a lot more like, and this is not for looks, but for performance. I was like, I will never eat crap and I'll just really healthy. And, you know, I wouldn't drink for like 8 months and always not eat chocolate. And then I think in Worlds, I was like, we just got really lost driving with a girlfriend. And then I had like tacos and half a beer. And the next day I won. And I was like, oh, like it's probably just made me relax a little bit. You know? Like, and I'm not saying go and drink like 10 beers, but like it's not going to make that much of a difference if you have a chocolate and half a beer 2 days before a competition. Like it's not ideal, but that's the thing that's going to make you win, I don't think.
Like Gary Tonin always posts about how he just eats cheeseburgers all the time, and hey, if you can get away with it, you know, I think people get like
it makes you feel better.
Well, I think obviously that's not what everybody's going to do, but just the idea of eating enough, right? Everybody's so overwhelmed by it's got to be this, it's got to be that, but you could have a perfect diet and still not eat enough and your body's not going to recover, you know? So
yeah, I think that's before ADCC, I actually really struggled putting on the weight, and I was doing like pretty heavy weights for hypertrophy. And, you know, my number one thing for safety was to try to get as close to 60 kilos or 135 or whatever it is as possible, just for safety, because you have like girls like Bia Mosquita cutting from like 145 or 150.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm trying to gain that weight, and for safety, like especially with my knee, that's not
since you have no ligaments in your knees. Yeah, exactly.
I was like, I have to be big, and I just couldn't, and that's because I just wasn't recovering enough. You know, I was trying to force feed myself with food, but you're not going to gain mass unless you actually sleep enough and recover enough and not train 3 times a day.
Well, that's an interesting point that I saw you talk about. You did an interview on the importance of recovery in jiu-jitsu, especially after 30, especially being a natural athlete, right? I mean, that's kind of something that, unfortunately, in the sport, it is what it is. But just talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, you do so much in terms of weights. How do you... like, what's your advice to people in terms of recovering? How do you know that you are recovering, and how do you prevent sort of overtraining, given that you're doing so many sessions and you're doing weights? What's your philosophy on that?
I'm not great at judging when I'm overtraining.
yeah, neither am I. So
Look, I've changed now, and I hopefully once we open up, I will keep this. Like, I know that when I'm not tired, I can use my brain, and I actually improve a lot better because I can recall every single thing
Yep.
that happened in a role, and I'm able to analyze it and go, right, this grip here didn't work. Like, why is this happening? Whereas when I'm tired, my brain just
You're in
doesn't
a
work, and
fog.
I'm not
Yeah.
able to make good decisions. Yeah, like it's literally I can't pick the right pathways in a role, because my brain, I'm just exhausted. And yes, I did it all, like training so hard, but I was so tired. Sometimes I would be just like, I can't put my pants on after having a shower. Like I would just sit there and go like, I can't get up, and that's
Yeah.
not good.
Sorry,
You've done that?
the only reason I say that is because I think you and I are probably more similar. I tell people and I think I give people advice, and then I just run myself fucking ragged. It's actually funny you say that. Someday, like, and I just keep going. Like I'm too
Yeah.
like neurotic that way. Like I'm not saying you are, but I'm too driven.
No, I
And it's like I'll go through phases where I'm in the shower and like my head is just on the thought of even getting in the shower sometimes seems like a lot. Like I feel like I'm underwater, like I'm moving very slowly, and I don't realize it until I have a 2 days off, and then all of a sudden like it's like my brain comes back online, and I get like I
am.
feel a bit depressed and I feel foggy, and it's like, but I'm like that. I say, oh, I'm going to change it, and then I go back into it. But I'm 42, and it's like you can't, like, recovery is a real thing. Like I have friends that are like, I'm going to jump on weights and I'm going to do this, and I'm like, if you're training super hard, more isn't necessarily better, right? Like you need to give your body a chance to bounce back.
I think so. And I think, I don't know, looking at Lockie, like he's very smart. He'll
Yeah,
be kind
yeah.
of sore one day and he'll go, I'm not rolling today. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's like
What?
ADCC is in 3 months. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean you're not rolling? Like, and he'll just roll hard the next day and he'll have
Wow,
a
that's
much better
cool.
session,
Yep.
or he will like just drill that day or just flow roll or something. But I say that and then I don't do it because someone will trigger me where I'll go, I'm just going light, and then
Yeah,
someone wants to
exactly.
kill me. So I'm like, well, fuck you, I'll kill you back.
Oh my
Like,
God,
um,
I'm so much like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
But it is what we actually did with my S&C coach. I had to fill out like a RP scale thing on a message every day to rate, well,
Like
perceived
perceived
effort of
exertion or perceived effort.
exertion.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and then how many minutes my training session was. And if it hit above a certain threshold, that was time to have a night off or something.
Yes.
But I would
Yep.
fill it out every day and it would hit the threshold like every day.
It's
And
like
I was
a
like,
yeah, like a
the girls are here, I'm just gonna drill.
yeah.
And one day, like he came home from his other work from an institute of sport and he got on the mat and I was training and he's like, him and
Get
Lockie just stood over
get
me and they were
out of
like,
here.
get off. What are you doing? Like and I'm like, I think it's like that paranoia of not being good. I don't
Yep.
know, it's nuts. And I think I'm learning slowly because yeah, I feel so much better when I'm not sore and exhausted and I can think, and then I can also do life. I can edit and I can
Yes.
work and I can be a useful
Exactly.
human
Exactly.
being. I'm not just an athlete, like yeah, I think that's
Sorry, for
yeah.
me it's more like I have OCD. Like I'm very like my brain is just like I'm the kind of guy that like if I could roll like 6 rounds, and if I have one that's bad, I'm like I got to do another 6 because that like I got to get that out of my head. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I feel
I
like
get
I'm my own worst enemy that way, and it's like it takes a lot of discipline to be smart like Lachlan, right? Because if you want to
Absolutely.
drive, like people think of discipline as like do another 10, 12 rounds, but sometimes it's like Lachlan saying, I'm going to pump the brakes here, and that's
Yeah.
really hard to do in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Oh, it's so hard. For me, it is.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Okay.
it's not clever. But look, I'm definitely changing, and especially like seeing the improvements I
Yep.
can make when my brain and my body's fresh. And the other thing is, it is age. I think when you're 19, you can kind of go a little bit harder, but I've certainly started feeling it a little bit more, probably
Yep.
in the last 2 years, just being tired, and I'm probably training harder than before, but just my joints, I've got like arthritic toes, arthritic knees, arthritic fingers, like my back hurts, and I'm like, well, I want to train when I'm 50. I don't want
I
to
know.
stop in
I
the next
know.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to. Well, some really great points. I just want to end here with a little bit just talking about ADCC, because what I found was really remarkable is, and I don't think this got enough publicity, but both you and Lachlan qualify for ADCC. You both win the trials. Tell me how that feels. Like that's such a historic thing. Like you're the first husband-wife combination to do this. What was winning it like for the two of you and that sort of moment?
It was like probably one of my favorite moments. And I know, like, some guys at the gym, I'm like, why are you so happy? It's just ADCC trials, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Just ADCC trials. It's like qualifying for the Olympics. Like, that's crazy. Yeah.
It is. But I mean, like, I guess what they're saying, it's like harder to win, you know, worlds or world no gi or gi worlds than winning ADCC trials. But
still, I mean,
it is different. It's very different. And I think for me personally, it was something like when Lockie and Craig won the trials in like 2014 or something, 13. I think that's the first time I tried. Well, Lockie was trying for many years actually, and he's come second a bit before 2014, and then he finally won his spot. So I did the trials in in Japan, and I lost to Rikako. I think I came second. I beat some other girls, and so I didn't qualify. And the next year I went back to Poland because I've got dual citizenship.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I was like, right, I'll go to Japan first. If I lose that, I'll go to Poland as well for another shot. And then I lost to Rikako again in the final. And then I went to Poland and I lost to Fionn. I was like, who's this purple belt? I'll be right. And I was like,
yeah.
Shit.
That was Fionn Davies?
That was Fionn.
Oh, yeah. She's pretty good. Yeah. She
was good even back then. Yeah. Fionn is amazing.
She's really, unbelievable. Really
and then it was like so many seconds for me and so many heartbreaks. And it's something like, I think because like Lockie and Craig were doing it and I felt like I was in my own, obviously, head. No one else thought that. I was like disappointing the women's part of Absolute. I was like, they're doing it. Like, you know, and then I tore my knee and I thought that was like the end of my career. And I know in my heart that like my leg locks, like the girls are still probably lagging behind the guys in the heel hook sort of territory. Not some of them, especially the 10th Planet girls, and some of them like are catching up. But I think just rolling with a lot of girls all over the world, I think for me, I'm not gonna take someone down because of my knee, and I'm not gonna pass, you know, a really flexible guarding no-gi, but if I can get into 50-50, I will submit them. Like that was everything was like, I can do that. I know I'm good enough and I'm one of the best in the world from that position. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying I will beat them in, you know, probably won't take someone's back. But so going to like having like that nearly career-ending moment where I couldn't really walk for a little while, and then, you know, having my knee like collapse and having panic attacks at training and having it taped up, and like literally like I think it actually gave way in my sleep the night before ADCC trials. And it's like a really gross feeling, and it just goes like that.
Was this the ACL injury that you were talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a bad one. That's not a good. That's not a good.
It's bad, and like you can feel it move, and it was still a little bit sore and swollen, and but you know, like even when I got injured, I like 5 days afterwards, I was on the mat and I was like, okay, I'm going to work back attack, like without using legs. And it's going to sound bad, but I would say like, imagine you're paraplegic to my training partners. You can't use your legs. I can't use my legs. We're just like starting from a harness because that's the only thing I could do. Then I added 50-50 on my other side so they couldn't attack my sore knee. So I actually got really good at like 50-50 and outside sankaku on my wrong side, and that became my A game.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then like I probably could, I don't think I could even really practice standing up in closed guard before the trials.
Wow.
Even though like I put a lot of time and effort into wrestling, I couldn't really train it much just because I knew that you have to train it to be good at wrestling, and the wrestling training is quite high injury prone.
Oh, absolutely. It's so dynamic, and there's a lot of body weight moving and falling. Yeah. It's a much higher injury rate than a lot of jiu-jitsu stuff.
It's just hard. It was just this hard balance of going, well, if it goes overtime, I have to wrestle, or I have to be sure to submit, you know. And one of my fights did go overtime, and I won it on ref's decision because I'm like, I'm not even going to shoot. I have to just pretend I'm doing more work. Not pretend, but like I can't risk shooting and stuffing up my knee, and you know.
Right.
So it was like it felt like nearly a goodbye party. Because again, I had like massive anxiety attacks before the trials, like to the point where I was like, well, because of my knee, I was like, I
Right.
can't even
Wow.
train properly. And I also feel like I felt like that for about 5 years now. But I kept saying like it might be my last competition because I'm 36. I'm getting injured. Like, if you want to have a family, it's going to get harder to come back.
Right.
I haven't finished achieving everything I wanted to, and I feel like I'm getting better. So I put this pressure on myself saying like it might be my last outing. And my sports psych was like, yeah, cool. Like, so have a party. Like, it's your last competition because you're
What? What kind of advice is that?
for years he's been going like, what are you talking about? You're still young. You say that every year,
Yeah.
And this time he was like, look, like you're not 27 anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it might be your last time. So fucking go and enjoy it. Sorry, I keep swearing.
Hey, that's all
Um,
right. We're all about the swearing here on the PFed podcast.
Yeah, like, so I really changed my mindset from going like, oh, I'm so nervous. Like, if I stuff this up, I'll never get another shot, to like, you know what? Like, hell yeah, I'm gonna like go and enjoy it. And that's really helped my mindset. And yeah, I think like again, like we started working on K guard 10 days or 2 weeks before the trials, and I
Yep.
literally like De La Hiva K guard heel hook,
Yep.
and I got a couple of them. So the feeling of that was like so incredible, just because I've tried so many times and I've failed, and because of the injury, and it was like just such a big personal achievement,
Yeah,
even
it's
though
huge. That's amazing.
outside it's like, oh yeah, you didn't fight a black belt world champion. To me, it felt better than winning any of the other worlds.
Yeah, but there's
Uh,
like the backstory to it is what makes it special
yeah,
too, right? Like
right.
that's what people don't see is like, oh, she won the trials. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
I just assume, you're banged up, but you're fine. And
yeah,
to go and
yeah,
have a performance like that in a trials where leg locks are a big part of it. Like, I mean, you're
yeah,
already compromised. I can't imagine.
yeah,
Like, I would feel really nervous, not only at that level with heel hooks, right? Because
yeah.
they're not going to screw around. And then on top of
No,
that, you're already thinking this could be a career-ending injury. It could potentially get worse. So I think that
yeah,
that's a really amazing
yeah.
achievement.
No, and then yeah, seeing Lockie win in Japan as well, it was like, oh my God, like we did it together, and that
Yeah.
was, it was just really nice. Yeah,
Well, I also just wanted to ask you a little bit about the day of. It just seems like such a roller coaster of emotions for you guys in a lot of ways. Like you
yeah,
go out there, and I believe was it Bianca you had the match against?
yeah,
I
yeah.
actually just rewatched it last night, and it reminds me of what you said earlier in the podcast. No, it seemed like you go to pull, she jumps effectively for a triangle, and
Mm,
you just kind of were behind the eight ball. Like it just
yeah,
was a really bad first exchange, not
yeah.
really because you did anything wrong. It's just when you get there. So just tell me about like you get there, and I don't ask this to put you on the spot. I just like what goes through your head when you've for you personally, when you've put all this in and you get there and it's kind of one and done, where are you mentally at that point, and
Mm.
what are you thinking after kind of losing there?
Yeah, it was really disappointing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and you're right. Like, I think the plan was to fill out the first 20 seconds to see if she would pull or try a
Yep.
takedown, or like what it feels like. And I just remember her collar tie, and I was like, oh, she's strong. Like,
Yeah.
I fought her a
She
few
did
times
look
before.
bigger. Like she looked bigger.
It was
You look, yeah.
different. Yeah, it was different. I was like, this is not what Bianca in the past felt like, And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, wake up.
Yep.
And then I thought, like, I gave it about 20 seconds. We're just kind of, and then I was like, I'm going to pull. And, like that's one of her specialties, is actually like getting a sub off the initial
Yes.
exchange. And
Okay.
I just probably didn't give it enough thought. And probably in the back of my mind, I still had the IBJJF have to have a grip to engage, to pull
Right, because you
guard.
don't that it actually kind of looked like that to me a little bit, because
Yeah.
you can just sit down, right? Like you don't have to
You
have
can,
that initial in that first few
yeah.
minutes or whatever. Yeah.
I did want to get underneath her. So
Sure.
like when you have a collar tie, you can sort of dive underneath,
Yep.
because she's also very good at like not engaging and then just like passing as you come in. So I
Sort
was
of
very
like
aware of that, and I
intercepting
just
your
wanted to
guard,
get,
kind of. Yep.
yeah, right under. But she actually got me in like I think she tried a triangle or something, but she got me in an Americana, which I was like, so I was sitting there in closed guard in an Americana going like, oh my God, I'm going to tap to an
I'm not
Americana.
tapping to an American.
Guys.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
was like,
exactly.
no, this is not happening. So I was like, best thing was I'm like, I have to give up mount, or I'm going to tap to this. Like, this is
Yeah.
ridiculous. And then I thought I was kind of okay. I escaped this, and then I turned my back for some stupid reason. I thought like, oh, maybe I'll have a better chance at escaping the back, and that was a really big mistake on my behalf. Like that was just dumb, not something you do at black belt ADCC level.
Well, it
But
wasn't just I mean, it seemed like you said, it was sort of in the heat of defending. It
yeah,
wasn't like you just decided to turn your back. It happened so fast, like all that
it is
exchange.
like kind of like half panic, half like, oh, I think I can escape in the
Yep.
scramble, and I didn't. And yeah, you're right. Like I think I was obviously really disappointed because I knew if I got to the legs, I had as good a chance as
Yep.
anyone on that day. I think it was a little bit like I just stuffed up in that moment, and
Yep.
I knew that. Like I know not everything was wrong. It was really disappointing not to, like, at least when you get off the mat and you're not even sweating. Like I'm like I
Yeah.
just didn't show anything. So that was like if I put on a fight and like had like actually did jiu-jitsu, I would have been happy. So I think the disappointing thing for me was like I know how far I've come, and I know that my leg locks were possibly one of the better ones in the
Yeah,
world, but
absolutely.
just obviously didn't show any of that. So yeah, and then obviously Lockie didn't do that well either. He lost against Lepre,
Hmm.
and again, like seeing him, like his wrestling got so good and his heel hooks got so good, and we both like just didn't display it. And I remember, I think it was like that night we were sitting, I think it was like me, Bet Hodgkinson, I think DJ Jackson was there, and we all got our backs taken, and we're like, oh, well, this is the loser table. Everyone
Oh.
who's here got their backs taken
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
So we were just laughing at it, and then at night, like we're having a beer, and then Mo came past and was like, if you do, like open weight, you'll be more likely to get an invite. And we're just like, I was like, you're not doing open weight. This is silly. But then when Mo said you'll probably get an invite, like he was like, well, I've won the trials 3 times. An invite would be nice. And yeah, I think my parting words were like before his first fight with Kynan, I was like, just don't die.
Oh my God, that's
Just
amazing.
don't
That's
die.
I thought maybe you had some like, all right, what you're gonna do here. No, it was just Lachlan, don't die. All right. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
we joked with Mo because Lockie was said like, right, like just I'll do open weight, but don't give me Puchecha first round just because like he's quite, erratic and very heavy. So he's like,
Yeah.
I just don't want to get hurt. And then we laughed about it because like, cool, like don't give me Buchecha, just give me the guy that beat Buchecha. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's the guy who just won his division. Yeah, that's awesome. No, but it was cool when I asked Lachlan about it. He was, and that's what I love about you two is you're very honest and forthcoming. And he said, like, I said, what was your head? Where was your head at going into that? And he kind of said, to be honest, I was a bit scared because he's like, I've never done an open weight at that world championship level, and that's where I was just like, that's incredible, like that's so
Yeah.
remarkable to me. So just tell me about that moment though. There's this great picture of you where you jump out, and that was like one of my favorite pictures, and I think you've been, because is it not like a year ago today or something like
That's
that?
exactly, yeah, yeah.
Jeez. But tell me about that moment. Like, you guys are like, it's literally a roller coaster. You're on the mat, and then you both lose, and then he's about to go into open weight, and he's scared, and then he wins, and then he loses to Gordon Ryan, and he's back. Like, just when he finally gets there, and you're kind of hugging him on the mat, just tell me about that moment, because you're in front of the biggest crowd in ADCC history, and it just seemed like such an incredible moment. So I just wanted your take on it.
It was, I mean, yeah, like when it happened, like, so it was just a 3 in a row. And I think after he beat Kanan in the first round, like, nothing else needed to happen for it to be an amazing day already.
Yeah.
So like we probably both had, no, I mean, I'm not speaking for Lockie, but I'm guessing like we both had not that many expectations for the whole day. It was just like, man, now it's like Gaudio, and then it's like you get through Gaudio, you've got like Gordon.
It's just a murderer's row. It's just a murderer's row,
like,
yeah. And giants, and they're all giants, right? Ali, Kanan, Patrick Gaudio, Gordon Ryan. It's like they're just feeding him like to sharks at that point.
Insane. Like, yeah, so when he beat Kanan, I knew when he got to the position, I was like, oh my God. And I think like in a couple of the videos, you can actually hear like, I was like, you've got it. Like, you will, like, I know you will tap them. As soon as he got to the position, I'm like, he will actually finish this. Holy shit,
Yeah.
And then it happened. And then like Gaudio looked exhausted after his first fight. So I was like, holy holy shit, like he thinks this is a rest and he doesn't know the position.
He thinks it's a rest round. It's not a rest round. You're about to get your knee broken.
Yeah, so it was just like I think he just like completely, he didn't think about like what position was better. You just do whatever you do. But yeah, the moment like just hearing the crowd was just like I still get goosebumps listening to it, and watching it happen. I think someone like Lockie, who he's probably not the best like athlete you've ever seen. Like someone like Craig is an athlete, and he's like. He picks stuff up extremely quickly, and he's also smart, and his approach is incredible. With Lockie, and I kind of put myself in the same category as Lockie. We're obviously athletic, but we're not freaks, Like he's worked so hard for like 18 years, and that's been like he's like I know I can win a medal at ADCC if I get good at these things, and then it doesn't happen again and again. So I think like just to see him so happy and actually shine was like it's. Like I've been more happy than I've ever been for myself because it's happening to someone and then like the whole crowd like singing his name and the nice thing is that like what you see is what you get with Lockie, and like
absolutely, it seems like that.
Like just a nice, kind person. Like he does not like talk behind anyone's back. He doesn't have a bad thing to say about really anyone, and like just to actually see it happen to like a natural athlete who's like, just like really level-headed, and I'm biased because I'm his wife, but he's just a nice guy.
No, I said that to him too. I'd been following him since probably 2015, and I've been pointing people to his videos, and I really liked him and his style, and I have a bunch of his DVDs because I see, like, I'm not anywhere near him, but I mean, like, he's not the biggest, freakiest, he's not super explosive. And to me, I'm like that too. And he plays half guard, and I like his reverse De La Riva game. And I just like everything about him. He's a natural athlete, and he's humble, and he's hardworking. And I told him actually when he lost to Lepre, like, he doesn't know me from a hole in the wall. And I wanted to send him a message. I was like, look, man, we all love you. You're the best. Don't worry about it, because I felt really bad because I just root for those people a lot because it's a sport with a lot of performance enhancing drugs and these social media shit talking and all that. So I just thought it was such a cool moment to have you both there too, since a husband and wife thing. So
it was very special. And like, even like, actually I got a message, for some reason, this thing came up on my phone today, and it was from ESPN Brazil. And there was a girl who was a journalist at ADCC, and she wrote about her 10 best moments at ADCC. And one of them was having Livia in the corner because she's a female, and you only ever see Leticia Ribeiro. And I was like, oh, like, so I wrote her a message, and I said, like, I actually offered, I was like, are you sure you want me in your corner? Like, why don't you have Craig or someone who can actually tell you what to do with your jiu-jitsu? And of course, at that level, like, you don't need technical advice. You just need someone to tell you the time and points and when to turn it up or when to turn it down.
Yeah.
And I think like quite a few women wrote me a message and kind of said like, it's actually quite iconic that you were in the corner. And I was like, well, I'm just a person in the corner. It's not about a woman or, or a man, like being the coach. I'm just another person. And like, but it's not like that in Brazil. And I was like, okay, that's actually pretty cool because I never thought about it that way. And the other nice moment was like, even with Lepre, we trained under Fabio Gugel for 6 months in Brazil. And, afterwards he's like, like, this is really nice. Like I'm coaching against you now. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, this is actually like a really awesome moment. So there was so many, just really cool things happening at that ADCC, really. Yeah.
So is the game plan, like, are you going to gear up for another run at this, or where are you at sort of with your future prospects and training and your health?
Yeah, I would like to. I mean, like, my health is great. I'm Lockie and I have been training, still relatively hard, and we're developing new stuff now, which is really cool. So my game's changing again. I would love to obviously give ADCC another go and actually have a good performance because I think I'm capable of that. It would be awesome if there was another weight class, like whether like it's like less or at least have a middle weight class or at least have more women as well, because I think there's so many great women that miss out on invites that are way better than me even. But yeah, look, I'll just have to, we do want to have a family as well. So it just kind of depends, like with this pandemic, we can't even compete. We can't go anywhere. So it's kind of hard to say. Like, I'm getting ready, like I'm doing the trials, and like it's going to happen again. And Lockie's training like he's, you know, obviously going to do ADCC, which he will. But I will have to see. Like, my goals are still to win a medal at Gi Worlds and obviously have a much better performance at ADCC. But who knows?
Yeah, God only knows where we're going to be in 6 months from now. You know, could be who knows. So. Well, look, you've given me so much time. I'm a really big fan of you guys. I really appreciate you taking the time. Like, you guys don't know me, but you guys have both been like super professional, super sweet. I can't thank you enough to give me your time. I said this to Lachlan too, but you guys have a friend here. I'd love when and if the world ever becomes normal again. I want to get you guys down here. I want to get you guys seminars. I've been a big fan of the both of you for a long time. So you're both very genuine, hardworking, sweet people. So I really appreciate that. I want to see you guys do well. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that maybe you wanted to talk about or anything like that?
No, I don't think so. Like, I actually just wanted to say thanks for doing, like, it's been like really fun, and the questions are awesome. And it's like surprising to see how much you've researched and actually like ask really interesting questions.
Oh, so, cool. Yeah, I'm OCD. Yeah. I got sheets for days here. So, oh my God. But of course, no, it's my pleasure. It's so much fun to talk to you guys. I love to talk about this stuff with really high achievers, and hopefully people that are like just starting or white belts be like, oh wow, cool. Like, I can see shades of myself in this person or something like that, you know? So
sure. Everyone's just a person, you know? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When I first started, I was like, oh, wow, like all these famous jiu-jitsu people, they're just people, and not every black belt is a good person. And, you know, like
yeah, it's true.
It's just a person. Like, that's all it is.
How can people find you online? Like, if people want to connect or follow your story, where can they find you?
Yeah, probably Instagram and Facebook. So Instagram is livia.giles, and Facebook is the same. I haven't really updated my blog for a long time, but yeah, we've actually recorded a podcast with Tom Crick and my S&C coach, Ben King. So we've got, it's on Lockie's like Absolute St Kilda YouTube channel. So we've just released.
I'll post links to this stuff so people can check it out for sure.
It's all pretty interesting about jiu-jitsu and S&C, so that might be informative for some people as well. But yeah.
Honest to God, when life goes back to normal, I'd love to help you guys get here, show you Toronto, all that kind of stuff. So you've got to.
We love Canada for the few days we've been there. So yeah, we'll definitely come back.
Yeah, you've got a Canadian friend here. So
thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate you doing this. You guys are awesome. You're two of the most genuine people I've ever met in the sport. So thanks so much for sharing all that. It was awesome.
I appreciate it, Paul.
Okay, have a good one, Livia. All right, bye.